Spotlight.
This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a special series 2025, the Year of Reforms. Today's discussion is on India's progress in defense sector. The participants are Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, Defense Analyst, and Nishit Kumar, Anchor.
In 2025, India's defense sector reached a historic turning point, evolving from one of the world's largest importers into a burgeoning global manufacturing hub. Officially designated by the Ministry of Defense as the Year of Reforms, 2025 has been defined by a decisive shift towards defense sovereignty and Atmanirbharta. And to discuss more about it, we are privileged to have with us in our studios today Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, Defense Analyst. A warm welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
General Shukla, we begin with India's robust defense ecosystem built and strengthened through the year, punctuated by events which have defined the future course, underlined prominently by Operation Sindoor. Now, how do you see this?
The jewel in the crown this year was the overwhelming military success of Op Sindoor. See what happened on the 10th of May. I have never seen a country so badly exposed. Pakistan had lost control of its skies. We were hitting targets at will, from Rawalpindi to Raiwind, Bulari, Skardu, all over. I mean, I spent 44 years in the army. We used to hit these targets only on the map. This is the first time we hit them on the ground. When we targeted Noor Khan base, it was just 1 kilometer from the GHQ. It was as profound a victory as that. So that was one point. The other significant light, there is a Lowy Institute in Australia which monitors the emergence of defense entities, powers in defense. This year, 2025, it has ranked India at number 3 in terms of defense capacities. Just imagine, America, China, India. And that is a measure of comprehensive military capacity. So all the points that you brought up, Atmanirbharta in defense, domestic manufacturing, exports, new normals in our strategic outlook, structural changes like the establishment of the Chief of Defense Staff. It is my understanding that since 2014, we have initiated the boldest, most consequential defense reforms since independence. And in those reforms, future historians may look back at 2025 as the turning point. Because of Sindoor, because what has happened in Atmanirbharta and defense, may I say that the journey is still not complete. We have a long way to go. But 2025 could be that golden year on which India's emergence as a military power of consequence was edificed. So Op Sindoor is really the jewel in the crown, but for a host of other reasons, which have been kind of stamped by Lowy Institute.
Absolutely. And before we proceed any further, let's listen to the Honorable Prime Minister what he had to say post Operation Sindoor.
हमने ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में देखा है मेड इन इंडिया की कमाल क्या थी दुश्मन को पता तक न चला ये कौन से शस्त्रास्त्र है ये कौन सा सामर्थ्य है जो पलक भर में उनको नष्ट कर रहा है सोचिए अगर हम आत्मनिर्भर न होते तो क्या ऑपरेशन सिंदूर इतनी त्वरित गति से हम कर पाते लेकिन हमें मेड इन इंडिया की शक्ति हमारे हाथ में थी सेना के हाथ में थी इसलिए बिना चिंता बिना रुकावट हमारी सेना अपना पराक्रम करती रही पिछले 10 साल से लगातार डिफेंस के क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भरता पर हम एक मिशन लेकर के चले हैं उसके नतीजे आज नजर आ रहे हैं
Under the central leadership, India has demonstrated that attacks on its citizens will no longer be met with restraint alone, but with swift, precise and decisive action. Prime Minister Modi has also given the mantra of 5 new normals on terrorism. Now, these are firm response to terror attacks. That is, any attack will be met with a decisive reply. No tolerance for nuclear blackmail. Nuclear threats will not prevent India from striking terrorist bases. No distinction between terrorists and their sponsor. Both will be held equally accountable. The fourth is terrorism first in any dialogue. Engagement, if it happens, will focus only on terrorism-related issues. And lastly, zero compromise on sovereignty. Terror and talks cannot go together. Terror and trade cannot go together. That is, the national security and sovereignty is non-negotiable here. General Shukla, how has this quantum shift in attitude changed the entire narrative?
India is now demonstrating what I call new normals in our strategic outlook. The shift has been gradual but firm. For example, 2016 surgical strikes were just across the LC. Then we said, if you mess with us, we will go and hit you beyond J&K right in Balakot, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. This time we've called this nuclear bluff. What kind of logic is this, that under the cover of nuclear weapons, I'll go on a terror rampage? What kind of nonsense was this? We've called a bluff. We are a responsible nation. We don't kind of rattle them every day, but we know what your nuclear red lines are and what our nuclear red lines are. And within that, I think we orchestrated the battle brilliantly. So we've called the bluff, which we should have called many years back. So I think it has been a great signaling in terms of power and restraint. And this is exactly what I say, that India has at long last started punching in accord with its strategic weight. And the message has, I think, gone home very strongly in Sindoor on these counts, that terror as an instrument of state policy will not be tolerated.
Now, talking of production and export records, India crossed the monumental threshold of 1.5 lakh crore rupees in domestic defense production, while exports soared to an all-time high of 23,622 crores, reaching over 100 nations now. Now, 2025-26 budget also saw an allocation of 6.81 lakh crores for the sector. Your views on this, General Shukla?
See, I think the larger signaling from the government is that defense is a productive enterprise. At one time, the debate was defense versus development, as if development was productive and defense was non-productive. I think that was not a very wise, shall we say, way of working. Look at this. Let me point out to you in larger terms. While India is a proponent of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, which is a very noble idea, let's not forget what Swami Vivekananda said. Swami Vivekananda told us that the world is a gymnasium where nations come to make themselves strong, which means power matters. The instrument of force matters. So we, of course, will be powerful, but always restrained. In that sense, the defense and military power are moving to the center of our strategic calculus. And the figures that you just gave us, capacity building, 119 contracts to domestic vendors, 68 contracts to foreign vendors. Now we are exporting to about 100 countries. What is it? I think 30,000 crores this year, about 50,000 crores in terms of revenue. So defense can become a tool for revenue generation. Why should the world's best defense companies come out only from the United States? Why can't we have a Boeing or a Lockheed? It'll be a revenue generator. It also matters in terms of strategic military heft. So there is a whole new approach to defense and national security in terms of revenue generation, capacity building, in terms of our relationships with the world. So defense is being used, shall I say, more sensibly, more smartly. And that, I think, is the big change from the past.
Absolutely. Very well put, General Shukla. Now, talking of production, what do you make of the opening of the sector to private players in defense production, which roughly now contributes around 23% or so, and almost 16,000 MSMEs are integrated as well into the supply chain and other domains as well?
So today, you rightly pointed out, the reason is that national security today is such a sophisticated domain. Look at the participants in Ukraine from national security. You see, it is private sector agility, business agility, innovation, technological prowess. In that sense, India also is making big strides. We always thought that the back end was in India, whereas the good stuff was happening in USA. Now the good stuff is happening in Bangalore and the back end is in Silicon Valley. American talent that was working in Chinese companies is now coming towards us because of the challenge and the opportunity. So Atmanirbharta in defense this time is all about the innovation, energy and enterprise of the private sector and startups. I'm once again paraphrasing the Prime Minister in a different context. What we now need to do is what he's been saying, deregulate further, remove what he calls niyamo ka jal. So if we remove this whole framework of laws, because unless private sector and startup energy comes into defense, we will never be a defense power in real consequence. That's what China is doing, that's what USA is doing, that's what Israel is doing.
Even as you say this, let's listen to the Prime Minister, what is said about the Make in India initiative in this domain as well.
Defense sector में Make in India ये नारा नहीं था. हमने इसके लिए बजट पॉलिसी में जो परिवर्तन करना था, जो नए इनिशिएटिव ले रहे थे, वो नए इनिशिएटिव लिए. और सबसे बड़ी बात, क्लियर कट विजन के साथ हमने देश में मेक इन इंडिया डिफेंस सेक्टर के अंदर तेज गति से हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं. एक दशक में डिफेंस का बजट लगभग पहले से 3 गुना हुआ है। डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन में करीब करीब 250% वृद्धि हुई है। 11 वर्षों में डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट 30 गुना से भी ज्यादा बढ़ा है। डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट आज दुनिया के करीब 100 देशों तक हम पहुंचे। इतना ही नहीं, हमने प्राइवेट सेक्टर के लिए भी डिफेंस के दरवाजे खोल दिए हैं और आज भारत का प्राइवेट सेक्टर आगे आ रहा है। आज स्टार्टअप टीयर 2, टीयर 3 सिटी के नौजवान, कई कुछ जगह तो बेटियां स्टार्टअप का नेतृत्व कर रही है डिफेंस के सेक्टर में।
General Shukla, take us through the acquisition agreements and new products which got inducted or which are in the pipeline for all the three services. We just saw President Murmu taking a sortie on board INS Worksheet yesterday at Karwar to name just a few amongst others such as the LCA Tejas, MK1A, LCH Prachand, etc., etc.
So see what is now different. Say you spoke of the aviation sector. Now what is happening in the AMCA project, especially the AMCA engine project? This is the next generation fighters I'm talking of. Once again, we are getting private sector in. So the private sector is now getting an opportunity. I was very happy to note that the Indian military is now signaling its response or acknowledging the arrival of what we say a software-defined military era. See, in the past, what mattered was hardware, the platforms. Now we are acknowledging, as we saw in Sindoor, the importance of wraparound technologies, software coming in. So we are integrating greatly with the national missions on technology, AI, space, quantum, EW. I think that is going to get game-changing. There is, the Anusandhan Fund, which is, I think, $1 trillion, which has been set up by the government for private sector investment into R&D. So private sector investment in R&D, that will be game-changing. If I can give you some more figures, I think you mentioned 2 defense corridors, Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh. There, they are generating close to 60,000 jobs, investments of 90,000 crores. So see, now it is civil-military fusion. We are fusing our capacities to strengthen both economic productivity, technological prowess, and strategic military heft. And last point you mentioned was about procurement. I'll give you one single data piece. The procurement timelines, which used to stretch above 2 years, are now being gradually shrunk to 70 weeks. So the technology military products are reaching the soldiers, sailors and airmen in faster time frames.
We'd also like to understand more about the new Defense Procurement Manual, that is DPM 2025, which was released, encouraging startups through hand-holding initiatives. You just mentioned the 2 new defense corridors in Uttar Pradesh and, of course, Tamil Nadu as well. Now, what does the manual mean and what could be its cumulative effect? Of course, being the creation of thousands of jobs is one of the offshoots of it.
Today is an era of technological innovation. Current Raksha Mantri, I know, has put a great deal of emphasis on this. And therefore, you have DPM reform, which is basically deregulating in terms of the procurement manual. But the real big ticket item is going to come early next year when you have the DAP being reformed, the Defense Acquisition Procedure. You cannot have induction timelines of years today. For example, AI software. In that realm, software changes in 3 months. So you have to severely deregulate. I hear some very good things being done by the Defense Secretary. Of course, they are to be tabled next year. That is very important because it will signal to private sector and startups that we have now deregulated sufficiently. Please come with your money. See where we are stuck today. Startups have matured, but to take them to the next stage, they need orders and orders. Unless orders come, VC funding will not flow. And unless VC funding flows, the defense marketplace will not thrive. So we are at that critical cusp. We've done pretty well in terms of private sector startup induction, but I would say the race has yet to be won.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, General Shukla, for having joined us and shared your views with our listeners.
Thank you very much.
Under the special series 2025, the Year of Reforms, you were listening to a discussion on India's progress in defense sector. The participants were Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, Defense Analyst, and Nishit Kumar, Anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.
Spotlight.